Tuesday's rescheduled Starlink launch from Cape Canaveral keeps the year's 72nd broadband mission on track after the Monday scrub. This is SpaceX Daily, episode 66. The Starlink 10-19 mission carries 29 satellites and is now targeted for 10:54 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time Tuesday from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. The Monday attempt was scrubbed, moving the flight to the next available window. This launch marks the 72nd Starlink flight of the year and supports ongoing broadband constellation growth. Direct-to-cell capabilities remain in development as the constellation expands. The effort continues the pattern of rapid iteration that has defined Starlink operations through changing orbital conditions. Meanwhile, the same first-stage booster returns for its 18th flight on the rescheduled attempt from the same Florida site. The booster has already completed 17 prior missions with no reported structural issues. Reusability continues lowering cost per flight through repeated grid fin and landing leg performance across ocean recoveries and return-to-launch site landings. Observers on X immediately highlighted the 18th flight as a new reuse record once the schedule shifted. While one booster racks up flights, the broader constellation faces new orbital maintenance demands from declining solar activity. Operators lowered the orbits of 4,400 Starlink satellites in response to reduced solar activity that increases atmospheric drag variability. The adjustment aims to manage collision risk with existing debris under changing space weather conditions. Lower solar output reduces upper atmosphere density, requiring active orbit management to keep satellites in their assigned shells. Several accounts shared images of the lowered orbits and discussed how solar cycle changes affect drag management. The move reflects ongoing constellation maintenance that keeps the network reliable as launch cadence remains high. From the Florida manifest, attention turns to the single West Coast attempt scheduled the same day. A Falcon 9 mission is now targeted for Tuesday morning from Vandenberg Space Force Base. The flight will add to the year's West Coast cadence with no payload identified in the schedule notice. The single California attempt contrasts with the denser Florida manifest for the same period. Vietnam's VinSpace signed a launch agreement with SpaceX for an unspecified future mission. The deal adds another international customer to the manifest and covers a dedicated rideshare or primary payload slot on a future Falcon 9 or Starship flight. No payload details or target date were released in the announcement. Canada awarded a $2.3 billion space communications contract that includes SpaceX elements. The contract supports national secure communications needs, and the same briefing noted a temporary freeze on certain SpaceX rideshare opportunities. The freeze affects select multi-payload missions while priority national security slots remain open. Another government customer appears in the same week the Canadian contract surfaces. The failure of a Chinese Long March 7A rocket created an opening for additional Starlink missions this week. SpaceX plans multiple Starlink flights to fill the gap in global broadband coverage at both Florida and California sites. The Chinese setback shifts competitive launch cadence pressure onto Falcon 9 operations at both coasts. Watchers in Florida posted early morning tracking setups ahead of the planned Tuesday launch from Pad 40. While West Coast viewers shared Vandenberg pad imagery. One thing worth watching is SpaceX's proposed large rocket launch site on the Louisiana coast, which has drawn local backlash over land use and environmental impact. Residents and advocacy groups question the scale of the facility and its effects on coastal habitats. The plan would require extensive permitting and infrastructure work before any construction begins. On the AI front, SpaceX's pursuit of the $60 billion Cursor acquisition is advancing toward a close, with shares noted above IPO price in related coverage. Morgan Stanley analysts suggested the deal could support a $600 per share valuation for SpaceX under certain scenarios. A SpaceX executive stated that Starship could enable orbital AI data centers to address terrestrial limits on power, land, and cooling. Cursor's head of talent described internal practices including private Slack channels and daily stand-ups that supported rapid product iteration ahead of the acquisition. From an engineering standpoint, ocean recovery of a Starship upper stage after re-entry introduces a distinct set of hydrodynamic and structural constraints compared with booster tower catches. The ship must survive peak heating on the way in, then transition to a controlled splashdown where wave action, saltwater corrosion, and variable sea states act on the vehicle. Unlike a booster that can use grid fins and landing legs for a precise vertical touchdown on a fixed structure, the ship lacks those features for water operations and must rely on its heat shield orientation and attitude control to keep the vehicle upright long enough for retrieval assets to arrive. The physics of buoyancy and wave-induced bending moments become first-order concerns once the vehicle is floating. Even small attitude errors can allow water ingress through any unsealed ports or damaged tiles. Retrieval vessels must therefore reach the site quickly while the stage remains intact, which is why the current Indian Ocean attempt is described as especially challenging. The Indian Ocean location adds distance and weather variability that increase the time between splashdown and crane lift onto a recovery ship. Saltwater exposure accelerates corrosion on any exposed metallic components or tile attachment points, shortening the window for data collection before structural degradation begins. Engineers can instrument the floating stage with pressure sensors and strain gauges that record real-time loads during wave passage, data that ground tanks cannot replicate because they lack the random multidirectional forcing of open ocean swells. Success here would supply flight data on post-re-entry structural margins that cannot be fully replicated in ground tanks or static tests, directly informing whether future ships can be refurbished for rapid reuse or must be treated as expendable after each flight. The same dataset would also calibrate models for future orbital refueling missions, where a ship must survive re-entry intact enough to be caught or towed rather than simply recovered from the sea. Each additional recovery attempt therefore narrows the uncertainty around tile adhesion, tank pressurization integrity, and avionics survival in a saltwater environment, moving the program closer to the full and rapid reuse cadence that remains its central open question. A quick look at the tape shows SPCX closed at $138.74, up 1.5%, with first reported retail selling since the June IPO. Before we go, the Indian Ocean recovery data will clarify whether post-re-entry structural margins support rapid reuse or require expendable treatment for the upper stage. That's the day at SpaceX. That's a wrap. SPCX is trading at $138.74, up 1.5%. If you're new here, subscribe and this briefing finds you every day. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you tomorrow. And before you go, this show is part of the NARA Network, a family of daily podcasts on tech, science, and markets. Each one a short, sharp briefing you can finish on the commute. If today earned its place in your feed, here's your next listen. Tesla Shorts Time, your daily deep dive into everything Tesla. Find every show free at naranetwork.com. And on the website, every episode's visuals live in our free image gallery at naranetwork.com/gallery. Royalty-free under Creative Commons, download with attribution. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.